The stars looked different from the observation deck of the EAS horizon. Captain Alan Wright stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the massive alien space station grow larger as they approached. After 20 years in space exploration, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "Captain, they're hailing us again," said Communications Officer Susan Martinez. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed excitement. "Put them through," Wright said, straightening his uniform. The screen lit up with a face that wasn't human. The alien had purple skin that seemed to shimmer with tiny lights, like stars embedded in its flesh. 4 eyes blinked at different times. "Earth. Vessel, you are cleared to dock at entrance port 7. Our atmospheric adjustments are complete. You may breathe normally once aboard." "Thank you," Wright said simply. "We look forward to meeting you." The transmission ended, and Wright turned to Martinez. "Get Dr. Powell up here. I want our science officer present for docking procedures." Minutes later, Laura Powell rushed onto the bridge, her red hair flying behind her. "Sorry, Captain, I was checking our readings on the station. It's incredible. The energy output alone suggests technology centuries beyond ours." Wright nodded. "And yet they want to talk to us. Remember the mission. We represent all of humanity. Now?" The horizon moved slowly toward the massive structure. It looked like someone had taken thousands of silver tubes of different sizes and connected them in a pattern that shouldn't work, but somehow did. Lights pulsed along its surface in rhythms that felt almost like a heartbeat. Inside the ship, 50 crew members prepared for first contact. They had trained for this moment, but training was different from reality. Humanity had searched the stars for other intelligent life for centuries. Now they had found not just one alien species, but apparently many. The docking went smoothly. The airlock opened to reveal a wide corridor with walls that seemed to shift colors subtly. "Carbon-based oxygen breathers, welcome to Station Nexus," said a different alien waiting for them. This one was tall and thin with skin like tree bark. "I am Guide Zeth. I will take you to the council." Wright, Martinez, and Powell followed Zeth through corridors that curved in strange ways. Other aliens passed them, some nodding and greeting, others stopping to stare. The humans saw shapes and colors they had never imagined could make up a living being. "How many different species are there here?" Powell asked, unable to contain her scientific curiosity. "The Confederation includes 17 spacefaring civilizations," Zeth replied. "All have been members for at least 10,000 of your Earth years, except the Marov, who joined only 8,000 years ago." Martinez exchanged a look with Wright. Humans had barely been writing for that long. They entered a massive round room. 17 platforms were arranged in a circle, each holding representatives of a different species. Some were huge, others tiny. Some had many limbs, others none visible at all. The variety was stunning. "The human representatives," Zeth announced. A ripple of movement went through the gathered aliens. Wright felt their eyes, or whatever they used to see, examining them. One alien stepped forward from a central platform. It looked almost like a giant jellyfish floating in air with tentacles that glowed with changing colors. "I am High Counselor Vren of the Galactic Confederation," it said, its voice somehow coming from all around them. "For 50,000 years we have watched your world. We placed it in quarantine long ago when we detected unusual patterns in your evolution." Wright kept his face calm, though his heart raced. "Quarantine?" "A protective measure," Vren said. "Your species develops differently from others. Most life evolves toward stability and harmony. Yours seems driven by constant change and adaptation. It is unusual." Powell leaned forward slightly. "Is unusual bad?" Several aliens made gestures the humans couldn't interpret. Finally, Vren spoke again. "It simply is. Now we believe the time has come to welcome humanity into the wider galaxy, though with certain restrictions for mutual safety." Wright nodded. "We understand caution. We practice it ourselves." This seemed to please some of the council members. One that looked like a collection of crystal shards arranged in a roughly humanoid shape spoke next. "We have prepared a formal welcome ceremony. After this we will discuss trade, travel limitations, and knowledge exchange. The ceremony began with strange music and lights. The humans watched, trying to understand the cultural significance of each ritual. Martinez took notes on her tablet while Powell studied the technology around them. Wright paid attention to the politics. He noticed which species seemed to hold more power, which deferred to others. He saw alliances and rivalries in how they positioned themselves. 20 years of diplomatic missions had taught him to read such things. Halfway through the ceremony, a loud alarm blared. The sound hurt human ears, and several aliens reacted with what seemed like panic, the crystal being rushed to a control panel. Catastrophic alert! Sector 87 reports a quantum singularity has formed near the Trimble systems. Wright didn't understand the technical terms that followed, but he recognized fear when he saw it. The council erupted into what seemed like arguments, with tentacles waving and lights flashing. Powell leaned close to him. "Captain, I think they're saying a black hole or something similar has formed near inhabited planets." Martinez added, "From what I can translate, they're arguing about evacuation protocols, something about only being able to save 40% of the populations." Wright watched as the 17 most advanced species in the known galaxy argued about procedures and protocols while people were in danger. It reminded him of committee meetings back on Earth, where talk replaced action when action was most needed. He stepped forward into the center of the council circle. The humans hadn't been invited to speak yet, but Wright didn't care about protocol when lives were at stake. "Excuse me," he said loudly. The aliens continued their debate. "Excuse me!" he shouted. The room fell silent. All attention turned to the human who had broken centuries of council etiquette. "This singularity," Wright said. "It's threatening populated systems?" Vren's tentacles darkened. 3 systems. Approximately 22 billion sapients. We are discussing the most efficient evacuation strategy, but our models indicate we cannot save them all. Wright looked at Powell. "Doctor, that research your team did on quantum field manipulation, could it apply here?" Powell's eyes widened. "Theoretically, yes. If we could get close enough to generate a resonance wave, we might stabilize it. But we'd need more data." Wright turned back to the council. "We might be able to help. Not with evacuation, but with stopping this singularity, the crystal being made a sound like breaking glass." "Impossible. The mathematical models are clear. Intervention would accelerate the collapse." Wright smiled slightly. "Humans have a different relationship with the word impossible than you might be used to." He stepped closer to the central platform. "Give us access to your data and your quantum mechanics lab. Let us try." The council members communicated with each other in ways the humans couldn't understand. Finally, Vren spoke. "You wish to attempt to neutralize a quantum singularity? This is not an evacuation discussion. This is far beyond your technological level." Wright stood straight, his voice calm and certain. "I'll handle it." The words echoed in the council chamber. Later, historians would mark this moment, these simple words, as the turning point in humanity's relationship with the galaxy. None of them knew then that within 5 years, those same words would lead to the sealing of Earth's borders and humanity's isolation from the stars. Silence filled the council chamber. The alien representatives stared at Captain Wright like he had suggested they all grow wings and fly. "You'll handle it?" repeated Vren, the jellyfish-like High Counselor. The translation system couldn't quite capture the mixture of confusion and disbelief in the alien's voice. "Yes," Wright said calmly. "But we need to move quickly. Every minute we spend talking is a minute those planets don't have." The crystal being stepped forward. "I am Science Elder Crix of the Lumen. What you suggest violates every safety protocol established in 9,000 years of singularity research." Dr. Powell moved to stand beside her captain. "With respect, Elder Crix, sometimes new perspectives can find solutions where established thinking cannot." Another alien that looked like a collection of floating metal spheres joined the conversation. "Our models predict a 98% probability that any intervention will accelerate the collapse." Wright smiled slightly. "Those aren't bad odds for a Tuesday." The human crew was escorted to a laboratory level of the station. The room was filled with equipment that made Powell's eyes widen with excitement. Martinez stayed close, recording everything in case they didn't survive to tell Earth what they had learned. "The singularity is growing," said a small green alien with 6 arms, each operating different controls. "Evacuation ships are launching, but most will not escape in time." Powell moved to a display showing swirling energy patterns. "This data is incredible. It's similar to the microsingularities we created in the Horizons lab, but on a massive scale." Wright turned to her. "Can we adapt our resonance theory?" "Maybe," Powell said, her fingers flying over an alien interface that somehow responded to her touch. "But we'd need to get much closer than these evacuation ships are going, and we'd need to modify our quantum stabilizers to work at this scale." Wright nodded and turned to the aliens. "We need to take our ship to the singularity." The room erupted in protests. Crix's crystal form seemed to vibrate with agitation. "Impossible. Your primitive vessel would be destroyed instantly." "Maybe," Wright agreed. "But if Dr. Powell's calculations are right, we might be able to generate a resonance wave that could stabilize the event horizon." "This is not how the Confederation handles crises," said Vren, who had followed them to the lab. "We have procedures, risk assessments, and while you assess risks, billions will die," Martinez said quietly. "Sometimes you have to act, even when you don't have all the answers." The aliens continued to object, but the humans were already planning. Powell worked with the alien scientists to transfer data to the Horizon's computers. Martinez coordinated with the rest of their crew. Wright negotiated for the resources they would need. 3 hours later, the EAS Horizon detached from the station. The human crew had volunteered to a person for the mission. No one had been ordered to go. "It's strange," Martinez said as she stood on the bridge beside Wright. "None of those aliens could understand why we're doing this. They kept asking what Earth would gain from saving their worlds." Wright watched the view screen as they accelerated away from the station. "They measure everything in terms of advantage and survival. They don't understand that sometimes you help others simply because you can." The journey to the affected sector took less than a day using the jump coordinates provided by the Confederation. When they emerged, the view was terrifying. A swirling vortex of dark energy pulsed against the blackness of space, growing visibly larger even as they watched. In the distance, tiny ships fled from 3 planets that glowed blue, green, and amber, in the light of their shared sun. "Are we too late?" asked Pilot Officer Eric Johnson, his hands steady on the controls despite the fear in his voice. "Not yet," Powell said from the science station. She hadn't slept, working continuously to adapt their theories to this new reality. "But we need to get closer." "How much closer?" Wright asked. Powell looked up, her face pale. "Inside the outer event horizon." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. The chance of return was minimal. "Plot the course," Wright ordered. "And prepare the resonance wave generator." Johnson nodded and began to guide the ship toward the singularity. The horizon shuddered as energy waves buffeted its hull. "Captain," Martinez called, "we're receiving transmissions from the Confederation fleet. They're ordering us to retreat. They say this is suicide." "Acknowledge receipt of message," Wright said calmly, "but maintain course." Powell worked frantically at her station, connecting equipment that had never been designed for this purpose. The ship's power systems had been modified, pushing safety limits in ways that would have horrified Earth's engineers. "Entering the outer event horizon in 60 seconds, Johnson reported. Wright opened the shipwide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. What we're attempting has never been done before. Our chances are, well, you all know the odds." He paused. "I want you to know I'm proud to serve with each of you. Today we might save billions of lives. Even if we fail, that attempt matters." The ship plunged into the swirling edge of the singularity. Systems screamed warnings as gravity distorted around them. The hull groaned under forces it was never designed to withstand. "Now, Dr. Powell," Wright ordered. Powell activated the resonance generator. Energy poured from the horizon in carefully calculated patterns, interacting with the quantum fabric of the singularity itself. For several seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then the view screen showed changes in the swirling patterns. "It's working," Powell shouted over the noise of straining engines. "The quantum matrix is stabilizing." The ship rocked violently. "Hull breach on Deck 4, reported Security Chief Dan Miller. "Emergency force fields holding." "Keep us steady," Wright told Johnson, who fought the controls as space itself seemed to bend around them. Minutes stretched like hours as the horizon poured energy into the resonance pattern. Slowly, the violent swirling of the singularity began to calm. "The collapse is reversing," Powell said in disbelief. "It's actually working." A final surge of energy washed over the ship, knocking out several systems. Then suddenly the view screen showed normal space again. Where the singularity had been, only a small, stable wormhole remained. "We did it," Martinez whispered. "We actually did it." The horizon limped away from the wormhole, systems damaged but core functions intact. Every crew member had survived, though several had injuries. When they returned to the Confederation station, they found themselves greeted, not as heroes but as curiosities. The alien scientists pored over their data, unable to believe what they had witnessed. "You violated every established principle of quantum mechanics," Crix told Powell as they analyzed the results. "By our science, what you did was impossible." Powell smiled tiredly. "Maybe your science needs updating." In his quarters that night, Wright received a message from Vren. The High Counselor's words were formal, expressing gratitude for the human intervention. But between the lines, Wright sensed something else. The galaxy had just witnessed something unexpected. Humans had faced certain death not for gain or advantage, but to save others. They had ignored established wisdom and succeeded where 17 older species had calculated only failure, and Wright knew as he read between the lines of the carefully worded message that the Confederation was not just grateful, they were afraid. News of what the humans had done spread quickly through the Confederation. Within days, diplomatic officer Susan Martinez found herself overwhelmed with requests. Every species seemed to want human help with their most difficult problems. The EAS Horizon remained docked at the station for repairs. The damage from the Singularity mission would take weeks to fix, but Captain Wright didn't mind. The delay gave his crew time to learn more about their new galactic neighbors. "I don't understand," Martinez told Wright as they reviewed the latest batch of requests in his office. "Last week they were treating us like dangerous children. Now they want our help with everything from climate disasters to power system failures." Wright studied the list on his tablet. Success changes perceptions quickly, but notice something interesting. They're only asking for help with immediate crises. No one wants to know how we think or why we make the choices we do. Dr. Powell entered with her own reports. "The Confederation Science Council is studying our resonance theory, but they're having trouble accepting it. Their mathematics says our approach shouldn't have worked. Did you explain that most of our big breakthroughs came from people trying things that shouldn't work?" Wright asked. "I tried," Powell said with a small smile. "They keep asking about our research protocols. They can't grasp that the theory came from a grad student's mistake, that another researcher decided to investigate instead of discard." Martinez's tablet chimed with a new message. "The High Council has approved our diplomatic tour. They want us to visit 3 Confederation worlds to foster understanding." Wright nodded. "Choose a team. This is our chance to learn more about them while they're studying us." 2 days later, Martinez led a small team to their first destination, the planet Zelaya Prime. The world was beautiful from orbit, covered in purple oceans and golden landmasses. The Zelayans were tall, 4-armed beings with skin that changed color according to their emotions. Prime Minister Lon greeted them at a massive crystal building that served as their government center. "We welcome Earth's representatives. Your recent achievement has been studied with great interest." Martinez followed diplomatic protocols she had studied, bowing in the Zelayan manner. "We are honored to visit your world and learn from your ancient civilization." The welcome ceremony was interrupted when a government official rushed in, skin flashing alarming patterns of red and black. "Prime Minister, The northern continental shelf. The stabilizers are failing. The Zilayans moved with sudden urgency, leading the humans to a control center filled with displays showing a coastline. Martinez quickly understood the problem. Massive underwater structures were failing, threatening to allow a geological event that could trigger tsunamis across populated areas. Our models predict 14 hours until complete failure, said Chief Engineer Tala, her skin pale with worry. Evacuation has begun, but we cannot move everyone in time. Martinez studied the engineering displays. What if you reverse the polarity on the eastern stabilizers to create a counterforce? The room went silent. Tala's skin flickered between colors. That approach was rejected during planning. The risk of accelerating the collapse is too high. But if you calibrate the force correctly, Martinez insisted, pointing to specific areas on the display, you could balance the pressure long enough to strengthen the western supports. The Zilayan engineers looked to their prime minister, who seemed torn. Our protocols do not allow for such experimental approaches during a crisis. Martinez stood straighter. On Earth, that's exactly when we try new approaches. Let me help. Hours later, Martinez stood with Tala at the control center as they implemented her plan. The technique worked perfectly. The continental shelf stabilized and millions of Zilayans were saved from disaster. As they celebrated, Martinez noticed something strange in how the Zilayans looked at her. Their skin showed patterns she hadn't seen before, colors that her translator explained meant admiration mixed with unease. The human team's next stop was the Fraxis Collective, a world of silicon-based life forms who lived in crystalline cities. They arrived to find a crisis already underway. The ancient atmospheric processors that maintained conditions suitable for Fraxian life were failing after 60,000 years of operation. Engineer Greg Bennett, part of Martinez's team, studied the massive machines with fascination. These are incredible. The basic principles are similar to some Earth technologies, but the scale is amazing. The Fraxian Elder, a crystal being that towered over the humans, vibrated with concern. Our technicians cannot identify the fault. The system follows maintenance patterns established by our ancestors. No deviations have been permitted. Bennett walked around the central processor, looking at it from different angles. That might be the problem. Sometimes systems need adaptations as they age. Mind if I try something? Without waiting for a full approval, Bennett began to work. The Fraxians watched in what seemed like horror as he bypassed certain systems and created new connections that violated their ancient engineering principles. This is not correct, one Fraxian technician vibrated. These patterns do not follow the sacred designs. Sometimes you have to improvise, Bennett said as he continued working. Perfect designs on paper often need messy fixes in real life. Within hours, the atmospheric processors were running better than they had in centuries. The Fraxians were simultaneously grateful and disturbed. Their perfect patterns had been violated, yet their people would survive. When the human team returned to the Confederation station after completing their tour, they found the atmosphere had changed. Alien representatives were polite but distant. Security measures around human areas had increased. Martinez reported her observations to Captain Wright. Something's wrong. They needed our help, we gave it, but now they seem afraid of us. Wright nodded. I've noticed the same thing. Dr. Powell tells me the Science Council has classified our quantum research as restricted information. But why? Martinez asked. We saved lives. We solved problems their best minds couldn't fix. That's exactly why, Wright said quietly. Put yourself in their position. Their species have built stable, predictable societies over thousands of years. Their progress is careful, methodical, and slow. Then we show up and start breaking their rules, ignoring their careful processes, and succeeding where they calculated only failure was possible. Later that night, Martinez couldn't sleep. She used her access codes to browse the Confederation's network, looking for information about Earth. What she found disturbed her. A recording of a council session showed various representatives discussing the human approach to problem solving. An Orvani delegate with 8 eyes arranged around a central body spoke with clear concern. They don't respect impossibility. They don't fear failure. They rush in where our greatest minds fear to tread. The Lumen representative, Crix, added, their unpredictability makes them dangerous. Today they save us. Tomorrow? Who can calculate what humans might do? Martinez found records of a vote taken just hours earlier. With growing alarm, she read the decision. New restrictions on human vessels traveling beyond their solar system. The official reason given was cultural acclimation time, but Martinez saw the classified notes. The humans must be contained until we understand whether they represent salvation or destruction. When she showed Wright the evidence the next morning, he wasn't surprised. They're afraid of change, Susan, and change is what humans bring wherever we go. So what do we do now? She asked. Wright looked out the viewport at the stars. We keep doing what we do best. We adapt. We solve problems. We show them that change doesn't have to be feared. But as more Confederation ships arrived at the station, taking positions that effectively surrounded the horizon, Wright wondered if the galaxy was ready for humanity's help, or if the words "I'll handle it" had already sealed Earth's fate among the stars. 6 months passed. The EAS Horizon had returned to Earth, bringing news of the Confederation to an excited planet. Earth governments quickly established a new space agency to handle relations with alien civilizations. Captain Wright, now promoted to Admiral, led this agency from a new station built in Earth orbit. Admiral Wright looked out the window of his office on Earth Station 1. The view of his home planet still took his breath away. Today, though, his mind was on the message he had just received. They're really cutting us off, said Dr. Powell, who now served as Wright's chief scientific advisor. All the progress we've made, all the goodwill from solving their problems, and they still don't trust us. Wright nodded. The new travel restrictions effectively limit us to our solar system and a few nearby stars. They call it phased integration, but it's really containment. Susan Martinez, now Earth's official ambassador to the Confederation, entered the office with more news. The Fraxian representative just canceled our technology exchange program. That's the 3rd one this month. Wright sighed. They take our solutions but fear our methods. He turned to face his 2 most trusted colleagues. But why now? Something must have happened to make them increase restrictions. Martinez brought up a data file on the main screen. My contacts in the Confederation sent this. They thought we should know, even though it's classified. The screen showed images of an enormous crystalline structure floating in space. It looked like a giant snowflake made of dark purple crystal. What am I looking at? Wright asked. They call it the Harvest Entity, Powell explained. The Confederation has been monitoring it for centuries. It was dormant, sitting at the edge of their space. But 3 weeks ago, it activated and started moving. Martinez continued. It's some kind of extragalactic life form. It absorbs planets for resources, converting all matter, including living beings, into energy. Wright's face darkened. Casualties? 3 core worlds already gone, Martinez said quietly. Billions dead. The Confederation fleet attacked, but their weapons couldn't penetrate its adaptive shields. And they haven't asked for our help, Wright noted. Powell shook her head. They're scared of us, but they're more scared of this thing. My scientific contacts say the entity adapts to every defense they try. Their simulations show total Confederation collapse within months. Wright was about to respond when an emergency alert sounded. A communication officer appeared on screen. Admiral, priority message from the Confederation High Council. They're requesting immediate contact. Minutes later, Wright, Powell, and Martinez faced a screen showing the Confederation Council. Many seats were empty. The remaining representatives looked tired and afraid. High Counselor Vren's tentacles were dull gray instead of their usual bright colors. Admiral Wright, we face an unprecedented threat. Our defenses have failed. Our strategies have failed. We require Earth's assistance. Wright kept his face neutral, hiding his surprise at this sudden change. We're ready to help, High Counselor. What do you need? The Harvest Entity defies all our knowledge, said Crix, the crystal being. It adapts to our weapons and absorbs our energy attacks, growing stronger. We've run thousands of simulations. There is no solution within our capabilities. Right. Notice the careful phrasing. Within your capabilities. But you think humans might have a different approach? Your species excels at the impossible, Vren admitted. We are formally requesting your intervention. All travel restrictions will be temporarily lifted. Wright looked at Powell and Martinez. Both nodded slightly. Send us everything you have on this entity. We'll assemble a team immediately. 2 weeks later, a small fleet of Earth vessels arrived at the Confederation defense perimeter. The ships looked primitive compared to alien technology, but they carried Earth's best scientists and military minds. From the bridge of his flagship, the newly commissioned EAS Defender, Admiral Wright watched the Harvest entity on the main screen. It was absorbing a small moon, purple crystal tendrils breaking the satellite into pieces that were pulled into its core. It's beautiful, in a terrifying way, said Powell, who stood beside him. The Confederation commander, an Orvani named High, Minister Dex joined them on the bridge. All 8 of his eyes blinked nervously. We have lost 4 more outposts since your departure from Earth. The entity grows stronger with each world it consumes. Wright studied the tactical displays. Your reports indicate it adapts to energy. Weapons. What about physical projectiles? Ineffective, Dex said. The crystal structure repairs itself faster than we can damage it. Powell had been working day and night with her team. Now she brought up her findings on a side screen. We've analyzed the crystal fragments your ships recovered. The entity's structure is similar to certain Earth minerals, but it responds to energy in ways we've never seen before. Can we use that? Wright asked. Maybe, Powell said. We've developed a biological agent that could alter its crystalline structure from within, making it brittle and unstable. Dex's eyes widened. Biological warfare against a crystal entity? That defies all logic. Exactly why it might work, Wright said. It won't expect it. But delivery would be impossible, Dex protested. The entity is surrounded by energy fields that destroy anything approaching its core. Wright smiled slightly. That's where we come in. He called a meeting with his top officers. His plan was dangerous, perhaps even suicidal. The small Earth fleet would approach the entity from multiple angles. While the Confederation ships distracted it with conventional attacks, the EAS Defender would attempt to reach the core and deliver Powell's biological agent. The odds of success are low, Wright told his officers honestly. Maybe 30% at best. Commander Frank Miller, his tactical officer, nodded. Better odds than we. Give most of our first dates, sir. The room filled with nervous laughter. Wright looked around at the human faces. I won't order anyone to come, this is volunteer only. Every person stayed seated, no one left. Why are you doing this? Dex asked later, as preparations continued. These aren't even your worlds being threatened. Wright looked at the alien minister. Today it's your worlds. Tomorrow it could be ours. Besides, that's not really why. Then why risk your lives for people you barely know? Martinez, who had joined the mission as liaison, answered, Because we can help. For humans, that's usually enough. The attack began the next day. The Confederation ships attacked from a safe distance, drawing the entity's attention. The Earth vessels moved in closer, using maneuvers that the Confederation pilots had called irrational and unnecessarily complex. On the Defender's bridge, Wright watched as his ships executed their parts perfectly. Time to move in. Full. Power to shields. The ship raced toward the entity, dodging crystal tendrils that reached out like deadly arms. Several struck the shields, making the vessel shudder. Shields at 60%, reported Miller. Those hits are draining our power fast. Stay on course, Wright ordered. Dr. Powell, prepare the delivery system. Powell worked at her station, preparing the biological agent. Ready, Admiral, but we need to get much closer. The ship dove deeper toward the entity's core. More tendrils struck them. Alarms blared as systems failed. Shields failing, Miller shouted. One more hit and we're done. Wright gripped his chair as the ship rocked violently. Through the view screen, he could see the dark purple heart of the entity just ahead. They were almost there. Everyone hang on, he said calmly. I'll handle it from here. The EAS Defender shook violently as it pushed deeper into the harvest entity's crystal structure. Purple shards scraped against the hull, making horrible screeching sounds throughout the ship. "Hull breach on Deck 3, shouted Miller. "Emergency. Force fields holding. But we can't take much more of this." Admiral Wright kept his eyes on the view screen. The core of the entity glowed with dark energy, pulsing like a heart. "Distance to target? 500 meters, the pilot responded, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. "But our delivery system is damaged. The automated launch tubes won't work." Dr. Powell looked up from her station, face pale but determined. "We need a new delivery method or this is all for nothing." Wright made his decision instantly. "Prepare a shuttle. I'll take the biological agent in manually." "Admiral, that's suicide," Martinez protested. "The radiation levels near the core will kill any human within minutes." "Then I'll work quickly," Wright said, already moving toward the exit. "Powell, with me. I'll need your help prepping the agent." In the shuttle bay, Powell helped Wright load the biological compound into special containers. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked. "The compound needs to be released directly into the energy matrix," she explained. "Once it starts breaking down the crystal structure, the chain reaction should be quick." Wright nodded. "How quick?" "Minutes. Maybe less," Powell admitted. "You won't have time to get out." Wright placed a hand on her shoulder. "Make sure the Defender withdraws to a safe distance as soon as I launch." "There must be another way," Powell said quietly. "Sometimes there isn't," Wright replied. "We don't ask our people to take risks we wouldn't take ourselves." Martinez and Miller arrived as Wright prepared to board the shuttle. No one mentioned the slim chances of success or the certainty of his sacrifice. Instead, Miller handed him a small device. "Modified transmitter," he explained. "Might give you an extra minute of contact through the interference." Martinez stepped forward. "The Confederation ships are providing cover. They're taking heavy losses to give us this chance." Wright nodded. "Make sure they know it wasn't for nothing." The small shuttle launched from the Defender, immediately buffeted by energy waves from the entity's core. Wright piloted skillfully, dodging crystal shards that moved like living things to stop his approach. "Defender to shuttle." Powell's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. "Energy readings are spiking. The entity knows what you're doing." "Too late to stop me now," Wright replied, pushing the shuttle to its limits. The small craft shuddered as crystal tendrils scraped its hull. The core grew larger in his view screen. It was beautiful and terrible, a swirling mass of purple energy that consumed everything it touched. Wright felt a strange peace as he made his final approach. "Almost there," he reported. "Defender, withdraw to safe distance now." The shuttle crashed through the final crystal barrier, systems failing as energy waves overloaded its circuits. Wright worked quickly, setting the containers of biological agent around the shuttle's exit hatch. His skin burned from the radiation. Warning alarms blared as the shuttle's protective shielding failed. With shaking hands, he set the timer on the containers. "Delivery in 10 seconds, he managed to say into his communicator. "It's been an honor serving with all of you." "Static," was his only answer. Communications had failed. The containers opened. The biological agent designed to attack the entity's crystalline structure poured into the core. Wright watched as the purple energy around him began to change color, turning a sickly green. His vision darkened. His last thought was of Earth, blue and beautiful against the blackness of space. On the Defender, Powell watched the entity's core change color. "It's working. The structure is breaking down." The massive crystal entity began to fragment, large sections breaking off and dissolving into harmless dust. The Confederation ships withdrew to a safe distance as the chain reaction spread. Hours later, where the deadly harvest entity had been, only floating crystal fragments remained. The threat was neutralized. Martinez stood in the observation lounge of the Defender looking at the debris field. Miller joined her, his face showing the same mixture of triumph and loss. "We did it," Martinez said quietly. "But the cost?" "He knew the odds," Miller replied. "He made his choice." 3 days later, Dr. Powell stood before the full Confederation Council. The chamber was different now. Many of the representatives were new, replacing those whose worlds had been lost. As Earth's new ambassador, Powell expected gratitude, perhaps even a celebration of their alliance. What she found instead was a council that seemed withdrawn and formal. The Confederation acknowledges Earth's assistance in neutralizing the Harvest entity, Vren stated, tentacles moving slowly. The sacrifice of Admiral Wright and others will be recorded in our archives. Powell waited for more, but instead, an Orvani representative rose. We have reached a unanimous decision regarding Earth's status within galactic society. A holographic image appeared showing a section of space that included Earth's solar system. A boundary line formed around it extending to include only a few nearby stars. What is this? Powell asked, though she already feared the answer. All routes to Earth. Space will be permanently sealed, the Orvani stated. Protective barriers will be established. No Confederation vessel will approach human territories. No human will be permitted beyond these borders. Powell stared in disbelief. You're cutting us off? After everything we did? After Admiral Wright sacrificed himself to save you? Precisely because of that, Vren said, rising to address her directly. You did what was impossible. You disregarded established knowledge. You improvised beyond reason. You sacrificed yourselves without calculation. And you succeeded where 17 species with millions of years of combined wisdom failed. The minister continued, its voice somehow gentle despite delivering such a harsh judgment. Today we are grateful. Tomorrow, we might be obsolete. The Confederation has survived for eons by understanding its place in the universe. Humans try to change that place. We cannot risk the chaos you would bring to our ordered stars, Powell wanted to argue, to remind them of how humans had saved them again and again. But she saw in their alien faces a fear that no words could overcome. A month later, Powell stood in Wright's old office on Earth Station 1. She had just finished, telling Earth's leaders about the decision. Now Martinez joined her, looking out at their home planet. So that's it, Martinez said bitterly. We saved them, and they thank us by locking us away. Powell shook her head. They're not just afraid of what we might do to them. They're afraid of what we might make them become. What do you mean? When Wright said, I'll handle it, he showed them something they'd forgotten or never knew. That sometimes you have to act even when the odds are terrible. That sometimes you sacrifice yourself not for advantage, but because it's right. Martinez considered this, and that scared them more than the Harvest entity. Yes, Powell said, looking at the stars beyond Earth. Because their greatest fear isn't destruction, it's change. As Powell prepared the report on humanity's first and perhaps last venture into galactic politics, she understood what Admiral Wright had shown the galaxy and what the galaxy had rejected. That the true power of humanity wasn't their technology or their weapons or even their intelligence. It was their willingness, when faced with the impossible, to step forward and say, those terrifying words, I'll handle it.